During this module, I'm going to be walking through the creation of a page leveraging the intermediate page template. Now, both umc.org and ResourceUMC.org will have use for the intermediate page template. Since umc.org is currently in development, and there's not the page is not in perfect working order on that environment, I'm going to be creating the intermediate page on ResourceUMC. But the principles will be the same, and the display, by and large, will be the same. So, we're going to start just like we always do. We're going to go to the specific site that we're wanting to work with. In this case, it's ResourceUMC.org. From that folder, we're going to follow the lowercase folders, home, and then content. Now, typically, the intermediate page is not specifically designed to go into the content folder because it's not an individual piece of content. Instead, ideally, intermediate pages will be leveraged as parent pages, similar to what we talked about in the previous module, where they'll be used to lead the site visitor to individual pieces of content by offering several sections that lead deeper into the site, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So we kind of discussed how the home page is a parent page because its sole purpose is to present opportunities to explore the site as a whole. Parent pages accomplish a similar goal, but they are more focused. So if we go to administration under topics, you'll see that it operates similar to the home page, but it's a much more focused effort. Finance and trustee, administration and planning, local church and staff parish all relate to administration. Anyway, and this is an intermediate page template at use. So, just as an example, this particular page, administration, exists beneath topics on the resource site, right here in the administration directly beneath topics, and then there's that page content folder that all parent pages hold. Just to get into it a little more specifically, and we'll cover this more in other modules, but the page content folder holds all the different pieces of the page. Those pieces are called components. So if we go to the administration page over here, we're going to see up here at the top we have a hero image, meaning a large image with a large textual blurb. That's called a hero unit typically. And here if we click on the section hero, that will navigate to that component. More than office work, more than office work, and most likely, and actually that's because I'm not on dev. But anyway, you see the point. Here's the image that's being leveraged in that section hero, and then similarly, this component directly beneath the hero is they're called promo cards. Let me log out of the experience editor. Tell you what, this is what we'll do. For now, I'm just going to show you the content editor, and then we'll get into the front side visual. Let's see. Okay, so we have a section hero, 2 promo cards, which if we look at, I am going to show you the page on the live site just so that we have context. It's a bit confusing. Administration. Even though this is not the exact page, it's based on the same template. So we have 2 promo cards, administration with a specific piece of content, and then another individual piece of content, 5 clues for successfully changing or growing. Promo cards are designed to lead to specific content. So that's different than a content panel. Content panel is used just to present textual or rich text editor content. Then we have tag grid sliders, and here we have 5 of those pieces on dev, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4 of them on the actual live site. If dev ever loads, I could kind of show you that, but for now, the live site is close enough. It'll give you an idea. The way these components work, Section Hero is meant to summarize the page. It's a lodestone or a compass for the visitor so that they know where in the world in the site they are, what the purpose of the page is. Promo cards are meant to take individual pieces of content and elevate them to the top. Ideally, these promo cards will feature content that is demonstrative of the overall topic or section of the site, the best of the best or the most relevant. Tag grids, it's a little bit of a misnomer. Even though they're called tag grids, they're based on taxonomies or sorting criteria, meaning this administration and planning section can display any grouping of categories or tags. And I'll get into the difference between categories and tags later, but ultimately categories are a broader means for segregating content. Usually these large sections, people tend to use category and section somewhat interchangeably. That's not perfectly accurate, but categories are a larger way to divvy up content, whereas tags they're less formalized typically, and they are a more, whereas every piece of content should have one main category, one piece of content can have up to a dozen tags. And those tags can be anything from the writer to the topic of the piece. So you get the idea. They're both sorting mechanisms, but category is a more rigid, more specific means to categorize, and tags are more granular and they are more specific, but they're also less rigid. So anyway, there are 3 main components on this page with the addition of this. Is called the edge or the rail or sidebar. In the intermediate page, it's designed to have this edge navigation, which is relative to where the page sits on the site. This one is underneath topics, so you have the parent folder auto-populates, or should auto-populate here, and then all of the pages on the same level appear in level. Ideally, if you have sub-pages, those will indent and display slightly differently on the intermediate page. But that's the anatomy of the intermediate page. Section Hero, promo card section, edge navigation, and tag grids. If we flip back over to the content editor, all of these different pieces represent the section hero, promo cards, and tag grids. The edge navigation, by default, should come into the page template. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to insert an intermediate page under topics. And again, this will operate just slightly different organizationally on umc.org, but the principles are the same. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new intermediate page. Okay. And again, when you first title any page template, you are populating both the title and the URL. But it's especially important that you're aware that it's going to go into creating the URL, because initially you cannot have punctuation or any other oddities in that field. So, intermediate page training SLF, all lowercase with dashes to make it friendly for a browser. And then down here we have the category name, and here we can have punctuation and uppercases and other items along, that don't fit in a slug. So you're going to notice immediately the intermediate page has most of the same fields that exist on a content page, the exception being that main rich text editor for the body content. The reason for that is the intermediate page is not meant to hold content. Specifically, it's meant to hold components. So the components, if you expand this folder, again, we'll have that page content. If you expand page content, the default content will spill out. Now, we only have one tag grid slider because that's the minimum for the template. That doesn't mean that you have to have it, but that does mean that's the starting point. So here I'm going to go ahead and populate the summary just in case. Summary. Okay. And then I'm going to featured content. If I'm being honest, I'm not entirely sure what those do. That may be a component holdover from, but we're going to add these two pieces of content just to kind of explore. Okay, so as far as the intermediate page itself, that should be the only content that we have to populate. I'm going to go ahead and save that. And then I'm going to get into the individual components. These components, one thing to note is they don't appear in order. But that being said, you have the ability to drag and drop the order and change it. So if you want the section here at top, you can drag it. Are you sure you want to move this before promo code 1? I'm going to say yes. And then it'll take a second, but it'll move it to the top, and that should stay as long as we publish. So I'm going to change the section here on main because it's just organizationally, it's a little easier to keep track of all these different components if they have specific names. You don't have to do this. It may come down the pike procedurally, but at this point, it's purely your preference for organizing your page. Intermediate section here at top, that's probably a bit long for what you want to do. Just keep in mind that they'll appear here, and by default they appear in alphabetical order, which is why section hero is beneath promo code. Okay, so the section hero, we have all the expected components. The section hero is really two sides: the image and then the text. So we're going to go into the editor, and this is a rich text editor. And I'm just going to take this text here and paste it in here. So, and I'm going to take this out temporarily for a couple of reasons. Actually, I'll tell you what. I'm just going to grab this body text because okay. Accept that. And the hero image, just going to see what this is called. That's administration.png. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into here. We've reviewed the media library just a bit. What I'm going to do is, I'm curious if we can find this item easily. If not, then we may use a different image just so that we're not spending all our time uploading assets. Okay. So you'll notice that once you enter a filter, it is kind of sticky. So as you navigate through these different sections, the filter is persistent. So, all right, for now, I'm going to just select this summated by 466 image just to kind of show what happens in a couple of different scenarios. And then the reason that I didn't paste the title here is because this component offers a title field, and it's better to do that here than it is to do it within this rich text editor for the body. So I'm going to save this item. And before I publish, I'm going to go to the Publish tab, and I'm going to click Preview. In this preview, oh, but that's actually good that that happened, because if you try to preview from a component as opposed to the main page, you'll get this message that says it can't be previewed because it doesn't have a layout. So I'm going to exit out of that and go up to the intermediate page. Okay, and then we're going to click Preview. This will allow us to see the progress that we've made so far. Even in the preview, though, the thing to keep in mind is that there may be minor variations because the preview is not an absolutely perfect preview. While that's loading, because the preview can take a minute, we're going to work through some of these other sections. The promo card is meant, like I was saying before, to elevate a specific piece of content. So we're going to go back to the content editor. I've selected promo card here. And you can tell when Sitecore is thinking, because if you try to hover over any other directory or item, it will not click over while it's thinking. And that's most likely because Preview is trying to render a page. So it may be consuming more bandwidth than we realize. Okay. Once this box appears, that usually means you're about to the halfway point. So, but let's see if we're on promo card 1. Again, if you want to retitle that, you just click on this, the name of the component, and you can retitle it as you desire. Sorry, this is okay. All right. So you can see here how the changes to the section hero. So, we've got the title, the body, and then the image that we selected, and nothing else. Okay. Now this is, I'm actually not sure why this is appearing here. I believe once the page is published, these errors will go away. That's part of what I mean by it not being a one-for-one in the preview. So, but we're going to move on to the promo card, and in order to decide what piece of content, we can change the search route, meaning the site that the piece of content is coming from. I'm going to leave that as default. By default, it should display resource files, and I'm just going to search for an administration piece of content. Okay. This is an intermediate page, article. We're looking for a content page, ideally, administration content. Okay. So once we've selected that item, you have the link title, and that is a little bit confusing. It's more a call to action. So instead of click here, I'm going to say learn more. And we're going to save this item. Oh, that's my fault. I highlighted it, but I did not select the actual content for the featured page. So we're going to search for that item again. And then it was a content page. And you actually select the page, not just by clicking on it, by clicking on the arrow to move it over. Okay, so now I'm going to save. And ideally, my hope is that as I refresh this page, the preview, that will take hold, but that may not be the case. So looks like it didn't, so I'm going to close that out. Go back to the promo card. We've made our selection on the first one. The second promo card we're going to go ahead and populate as well, and then we'll move into the slider. Okay, just so we're not languishing, I went ahead and selected different pieces of content. And as you can kind of see, this Kurt Advent is just a dummy piece of content, and then the 12 Days Before Christmas is an actual piece. So I've pulled those in, and you can see how they display as the promo cards. I'm going to go back to the back of the site, and here are the two promo cards. If we want, like I said, we can rename those, if we know specifically what we want them to be. But I would keep it in general terms as opposed to titling after content, because these will likely be changing. So promo card 1 and 2 may be the most ideal. For the tag grid slider, even though there are 5 of these implemented on the administration page, I'm just going to work with one of the tag grid sliders to kind of demonstrate. These we've worked with a lot on the other page templates. You're going to begin with the title. By default, it'll say tag grid, but you can say administration. You could essentially title these as you see fit. Button title again. By default, it's going to be read more, and that's fine. And then the button link. So here's where tag grids and promo cards differ pretty deeply. I'm just going to navigate back to the ResourceUMC page so that we can kind of see a tag grid up and going. Use topics and administration. All right, so with the tag grids, whereas promo cards are intended to highlight an individual piece of content, tag grids take the taxonomy of a tag or a category and populate this grid with related content. Ideally, that will also lead to an additional page. So when you click, it'll lead you to the administration overarching page, diversity and inclusiveness, so on and so forth. It's a very effective way to say, hey, all of this content is related, while still offering a very effective funnel into other sections of the site. So whereas with the promo cards we selected individual pieces of content, we're going to bypass the button link for now, and we're going to go down and actually select the the content that appears in the tag grid. So first, you're going to run into this section called Search Settings. Listing start has to do with how many items you want to appear in the tag grid. So I'm going to say 1, listing record end. I'm going to say 100. That does not mean that 100 items are going to appear in the tag grid. That means if there are 100, then all 100 will render into the slider. The downside for that can be load times. So ideally, you want to keep in mind how many items are going to appear in that tag grid. By default, it will be 6, 2 rows. But I'm going to make it 18 because it's neatly divisible by 6, and that will give us 3 slides. Again, if we don't have 18 pieces of content that fit within that criteria, then only the number of items that fit will appear. Okay. The date range start and end are not necessary. You can use those if you want to sort content by date. But I'm not going to worry about that for now. Instead, we're going to start with priority articles. What this does is essentially whatever criteria you set for the sorting mechanism or the filter for this tag grid, the priority articles reach beyond that and allow you to select individual pieces of content that you would like to still appear in the tag grid, even if they're older or if they don't appear within that criteria that you're about to define. So these 2 items, the agency content page and then the test content page, have been chosen as priority articles. So once we publish this and go back to the other side, we should see those in the tag grid. Exclude category, exclude tag allow you to specify content either by category or tag that you do not want included. That may seem counterintuitive, but it just gives us additional level of control to prevent undesirable content in a specific context from appearing. So in other words, if you chose agencies and you selected a particular agency like archives and history, but then a controversial topic is happening like gay marriage, then you could go down to gay marriage or human sexuality in the category and select that to be excluded. So it just creates an opportunity to cross-reference. The include category and include tag are what we're really looking for. So we're going to choose agencies, archives, and history by default. And then I'm going to choose topics administration because we know that there's content there on dev. The article tags are arranged alphabetically. The biggest reason for this is to prevent the creation of redundant or slightly varied tags, which dilute the effectiveness of tags across the site. So I'm going to select 2, and then I'm also going to select Advent because, again, I know that there's content in that tag. Once we've made those selections, then we should be good. So I'm going to save this component. I'm going to go back to the intermediate page. And I'm going to save it. Now, remember, when you're going to preview a page, you have to go to the page as opposed to the component. We're going to click Preview and preview that page. And with luck on our side, everything is populated. Now, the thing that's missing here are the thumbnails. Most likely the issue there is that these articles don't have thumbnails because we're working on the dev environment where this is not live content. And you can see if you click to the links, there's no image, and most of these don't have any content at all. But if the individual content is set up correctly, you'll have a thumbnail, the title, learn more, and then also a category or the specific taxonomy that you're using to sort. All right, so those are the various components. Again, here's the edge nav. Previously, we got an error when this was rendering, but you see how it takes the parent folder topics and then renders out all of the siblings to the intermediate page that we created. And once we navigate down, we should have a nice children structure as well. So that covers the basics of the intermediate page. This page can also be altered using Experience Editor. That's a more specialized training. Really understanding Experience Editor is a concept that can be used across the page template, so I'm not going to get into that here. Instead, I'll do an entire module dedicated to working in the Experience Editor in general, and then each of the components and how they relate to page templates in another module.